So we've got our portfolio ready to go. We did the checklist. It's in pretty good shape. We're ready to start applying. Yes, job searching is a full-time job. So applying online is a numbers game. When you apply online, you have a 1 in 25 chance of getting a call back. 1 in 25. So not good. So you're on LinkedIn, you see an awesome job, you hit apply, you upload your resume, maybe a cover letter, you put in your portfolio information and you hit apply, and then you wait and you wait. You probably don't hear anything. It goes into the black hole. You have no idea what happened. Um, you know, I've read people who've had to, apply to 250 jobs just to get one offer by just applying online. Along those lines, do not ever use Easy Apply on LinkedIn. All that does is send your headline, your name, and your last 5 job titles to the recruiter. That's all it sends them. So unless every job title matches exactly what they're looking for, you're not going to hear back. It's a waste of time. Spend a little effort. All right, reaching directly out to people has a 60% higher return rate. So what does that mean? Well, we'll get into networking in just a few minutes, but you apply online first, so you get in the system. So there's applicant tracking systems, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Get in the system, and then use LinkedIn, like be a stalker, pretend you're Facebook and you're stalking the crap out of somebody. Um, who's the hiring manager? Who else is on that team? Who's the recruiter? Just as soon as you find that information out, reach out to them and just say like, hey, I just applied, 2 bullet points on why you're awesome for the company. Would love to hear back. You can send that directly through email. You can do an in-mail if you have those. If you don't worry about it. You could possibly send them in a connection message. They're not always read, but it's, certainly one way around if you don't want to pay for LinkedIn Premium. Try and find their email. That works best, and we'll go over that in just a minute. So if you don't hear back a week later, send them another message. Do not copy the same message. Do not be like, hey, I emailed you and I didn't hear back. Or I emailed you last week and I heard back. Be like, hey, trying to connect, just want to jump to the top of your inbox, something like that. Just a couple sentences, and then keep trying for a good 4 to 6 weeks until you hear back. If it's been 6 weeks, they're probably ignoring you. You can choose to keep going. Persistence is a good quality, but sometimes you've got so many other irons in the fire that maybe it's not worth it. One thing, do not add your resume to your portfolio site. I see this all the time. And the reason is your resume should be very, very targeted to the specific job you're applying for. So a generic resume on your portfolio site is not doing you any favors. I download it and think you don't match what I'm looking for at all. And so then you've just lost a possible opportunity, or you're like making touch-ups and you have to constantly re-upload your resume and link to it again. There's just no benefit to it in the long run. If there's something you want to call out about past experience, just put that directly on your portfolio. And we'll go over how to target your resume in just a minute. And then finally, make sure you have a support network. Friends, families, peers you went to boot camp with, other designers. There's tons of communities of designers out there, from Hexagon UX, Design Buddies. There's a new one I ran into, like the Design Collective Studio or something like that on Discord. There's tons of communities out there for designers. Reach out and just have people you can vent with. If you don't, you're going to get very depressed and in a dark place and you'll give up. You need people to vent to. You need people to give you feedback. You need people to, say, hey, you can do this and be a cheerleader to you. So these people may be different people providing these different roles, but make sure you have them in your life or you're going to a very dark place. All right, cover letters. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of cover letters because I'm lazy. Um, I find them useful if it's like a job that I really, really want and I can create a really targeted and meaningful and well-written cover letter. Your cover letter should be less than a page, half to 3/4 of a page max. If you're just doing a templatized cover letter and just changing the names of things, don't bother. Um, ATS, or applicant tracking systems, do read cover letters and resumes, so it can be useful. So that's when you're applying online. So examples of ATS are Taleo, Workday, Bamboo HR, Level, ZipRecruiter. There are so many other ones out there. I can't remember. Hate Workday more than anything. It's the one where you upload your stuff and it asks you to fill out all the fields anyway. It's really awful. Anyway, so they do read for key words. So if you think you can add something in your cover letter, then yes, it might be useful. If you don't feel like there's anything, like you're really not going to make an effort, then don't bother. Don't waste your time. This takes enough time applying as it is. So unless you're going to write a good cover letter, don't bother. When writing cover letters, use the language of the company. So you read, like, do research on the company. What does that mean? It means going to the company's LinkedIn page, going to the job description, going to the company's website and reading the about me and the mission and like stuff like that. And what kind of language do they use? Do they call people product designers, UX designers, visual designers, UX, UI designers? Are they mission oriented? Are they all about money? What do they say their products do? Totally blanking, but like for example, I had a mentee who really wanted to work at Peloton. And so she was doing research and like crafting her resume to match the language of like impact and drive and using words like that in her resume and cover letter. She did a passion project around a feature of Peloton, which I'll talk more about later. Make sure you find a meaningful connection between you and the company. This is, once again, there's the spray and pay approach, which we said had a 1 in 25 chance of even getting a call back, where you just apply, 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 apply. It's exhausting and depressing. If you can make a connection between you and the company, oh, I've been using your product for like a million years, or I had the same, troubles in my life as the founder. Um, oh, I believe the same mission. You need to make those connections. And then finally, and this is where I see so many cover letters falling short, and it's even true in a lot of the templates you'll get online and stuff, is your cover letter should say what you can do for the company, not what you want from the company. So I see a lot of times of like, I saw this position at your company for X, and I'd love to work there because I'm passionate and I love what you do. I'm looking for mentorship. I want to like grow at your company. Like, why should I invest in you? You're just telling me about you. Like, what are you going to bring to me that makes me want to hire you? Like, my past experience has allowed me to like increase marketing by X%. Or, there's lots of ways you can add things in, but say like, you bring me on and I'm gonna freaking like kill it as a product designer. You don't lie, but you really make impactful statements that make you interesting. So that, once again, takes a lot of practice and a lot of effort. And honestly, I'm lazy, so I rarely do cover letters. Um, And they're not something that's easy to templatize. If you're templatizing your cover letter no matter what, then you're not putting in the effort you should. So just something to think about. Resumes. So ATS. So they scan your resume content and use an algorithm to search for keywords. When you apply using an applicant tracking system, and LinkedIn links to a lot of tracking systems, so you need to have what we call an ATS friendly resume, which is super boring. It should be a document like a Google Doc or a Word doc. You can uh, convert it to a PDF to upload. I don't know why I'm like paranoid about uploading like a doc instead of a PDF, but some of them actually require that they're a doc. But anyway, single column, do not do single columns. Different ATS systems have different rules, so you gotta design for the lowest common denominator, which literally means no icons, no color, no columns. Basically, you can do bold, italic, and normal font weights, and bullet points, and commas, periods, and dashes. And that's about all you get. I know that sounds crazy, but there's some of them like Workday that are still so behind the times it cannot parse different information. Once again, use the company's language. I should really do a talk on just the resumes. Use their language. So how is a job description written? So this is so frustrating. This takes a lot of effort too. But so I should have got an example, but you know, leads, blah, 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 in by I don't know, I'm kind of blanking, says leads whatever by whatever. So use those exact same words. Don't copy and paste the bullet point, but use a very similar wording to what they're saying. And like ATS systems do not recognize different tenses of words. So if you say learns and the resume or the job description says learn, half of them don't know the difference or like can't make that distinction, and so they'll won't recognize that keyword. They'll be like learns, oh that's not learn, we don't have that. So I'll go over some tools that you can use to get around this problem. If it says visual designer and you have UI designer on your resume, put UI designer. Replace visual designer with UI designer. If they list, oh, Figma, Sketch, InVision, say you can use all those. I mean, don't lie, but make sure you mention those multiple times. If they say, oh, we're double diamond process or agile or lean, make sure you're talking about that in your resume. Once again, don't lie, but is there ways that you can, say, oh, I worked in an agile environment or stuff like that. So some examples, resumes. So after your ATS resume and you're reaching out, to the hiring manager or the recruiter, that's when you can send a pretty resume. So the ATS resume can only be black, white, and gray. So the resume on the left would fail. So what happens is you upload it and you're like, yay, I uploaded my resume. You don't hear anything. Well, it could have automatically rejected you and you wouldn't even know because it wasn't formatted correctly. Like it just goes into a black hole, it's like rejected. You don't get like an email or anything like that. So you don't even know. So the one on the left would not parse by an applicant tracking system. One thing to also keep in mind, if you notice in the bottom, it says like expertise. Don't use graphs or anything like that. There's no baseline on those graphs, so your expertise in that might not match what we consider a high level. You notice little dots on like languages, no baseline once again. So don't use measurements like that. You want actual numbers. So they were trying to be creative and show a nice resume. So you can share a creative resume when you email that hiring manager directly, or the recruiter or something. A better way to do it is the one on the right. This person applied to Spotify. So you'll see they're using the Spotify colors. Their bullet points sort of match the icon design of Spotify. They have the lines, the button styles match Spotify. So this is where you can really stand out. I've heard of people doing this for Facebook and Instagram. A lot of the big tech companies mostly. Um, Actually, I did know someone who did it for a startup, for like a food startup. But this is where you can be creative. If you're emailing it directly to someone, don't go overboard, but you can definitely call out like, hey, I'm really interested into your product by doing something like this. And this only works with email. This would fail an applicant tracking system. All right, so here's an example of my ATS friendly resume. Your layout might not be exactly the same. So one thing to keep in mind is your title up here. I change this for every single job I apply to. Is it called design program manager? Is it UX designer? Is it product? Well, I don't apply to product manager, whatever. This should match the title of the job description. When you go down here, so I was not a design program manager at Interaction Design Foundation. I actually didn't even have a title, which was sort of frustrating. But I worked in the education portion and I managed vendors and I managed content and people. So I was like, well, design program managers do that. So put that in there. So the more instances of the job title you have in your resume, the higher it will rise in ranking in an applicant tracking system. Flatiron School, I was a freaking teacher, you know, but I said design program manager, product design, because I was actually managing multiple projects. Um, those projects weren't design program manager projects, but they were still, I was managing people and processes, so did that. The other thing to be careful is applicant tracking systems are really picky about where you put your dates and the format they're in. So if you have just year and year, not gonna like it. You need to have month and year. Um, they should usually be on the side. I know some people like put them below. Down here, not all of them read that. So I know it's annoying and you can see it gets a little squishy, but always try to put them to the right of your title. They can also be picky about whether you put the company or your title first. So I'll give you a tool for checking that. So another thing is it's really good to have like percentages and like how you showed your impact. So I'd like to show one way I did that is this last bullet here, reduce the need for design resources, which saved the company $125,000 in 6 months. So the way I came up with that is I was teaching 2 classes when I was supposed to have another instructor helping me. So I just took the salary for that supposed help that I didn't have and said, well, like if they would have been working there, the company would have spent this amount of money, but because they were not working there, the company saved this amount of money by working me too much. So that's one way to get some percentages. Another thing you can do is like usability testing, like increased, ease of use by 25%, like use your usability testing numbers. Some of them I'm fudged a little, like for side projects, I actually don't know the exact percentage that I increased the product design student experience. I got positive feedback and I got a lot of, positive stuff, but I can't say it was like exactly 10%. I don't know. Um, I only have qualitative data, but I know that I increased it by some amount. And then I went by how many students I taught and that percentage based on the rest of the amount of students on other campuses. And we were 10% of those students. So that's how I calculated that number. So you got to be a little creative to get those numbers in there, especially if you're first starting out. Usability testing is a really good way to get some numbers in there. Um, and make sure you can use these for your past jobs too. It doesn't have to always be UX jobs. Um, you know, if you worked super hard because they wouldn't hire another resource, you can say you saved the company X amount of money. You worked overtime, you saved the company X amount of money. You did design and you did usability testing, you increased, you know, the ease of use by this amount. Led UX research operations for the organization, increasing member insight by 5%. Once again, that's not an exact number, but I started at 0. They had no UX research operations. So I'm like, well, we got some information, so that was a positive. We got information we didn't have before. Um, so I was like, okay, I'll put a small number like 5%. You can do some research. I did do some research on like how KPIs for other companies and like what the average was. And so that's sort of how I came up with that number. So all of these things should change, well, except the percentages based on what job you're applying for. All right, some tools. So Cultivated Culture Resume Scanner. Cultivated Culture has a lot of tools and they're free. So just sign up for a free account. This is really cool. It lets you put in your resume and then paste in the job description and then compare, and it gives you a ranking. Every time I've gone above 90% on Cultivated Culture, I've gotten a call back. So that's worked for me personally. JobScan.io does the same thing. You put in your resume, you put in the job description, it compares it. It does have a little thing that says like most of the time, not all the time, but like, oh, this company uses like the Workday ATS. And so it'll tell you like, oh, it can read different tenses or it can understand plurals. It doesn't have it for all of them, but it has it for like a lot of the big companies. I've honestly never gotten a call back from anything I've done on JobScan, but sometimes I'll do both just to see like, oh, what is some information about the applicant tracking system? But I really focus more on the Cultivated Culture one. Your bullet points are your bread and butter. If you want to write good bullet points, you can use the Resume Bullet Analyzer. I find it sort of fun, but it can also be very frustrating to write the perfect bullet point. It has all these metrics and tells you like you need to do this better or that better. All right, you've applied for a job online and now you need to reach out to the recruiter or the hiring manager. I should put here, first use LinkedIn. You can simply put in the company name and the word recruiter or the name of the team or the name of the company and design and see who comes up. Like you're not going to get 100% every time, but just something. Once you've got that name, you can use one of these 3 tools. There are more, but these are the ones I've had the most success with, to find their work email address. Sometimes you can find their personal email, but in general, it's their work email. And then that's when you would attach their pretty resume, email them a short, quick note of they're applying for this job and you'd love to be considered, blah, blah, blah. I have some scripts. Before you send that email, make sure it's a valid email. Here are 2 tools I recommend. I use Mail Tester a lot, so it checks if it's a valid email, if it's like gonna bounce or something like that. And then email trackers. It's funny, I was chatting with Andy and she's like, oh, I feel a little dirty about that. I use Mixmax to the full extent. So it tells you you sent an email to the hiring manager or recruiter and it tells you if they opened your email. It tells you how many times they opened that email, what time they opened the email. And there's no indication on their end, so they don't know that you're tracking this information. Mixmax has a lot of other great features. There's a free version and a paid version. The free version works for tracking if you need to. There's also a mail tracker Chrome extension you can use. So I don't like it as much as Mixmax, but it works. So, did I send my resume into a black hole? Well, these are some ways that, hey, where's that resume going and who's looking at it? So definitely recommend using these tools. Once again,